Welcome to another episode of BHBA Family Law Presents Direct Examination with Dan and Lauren. Along with Lauren Youngman from Youngman Reichstein, I'm Dan Bemmel, financial advisor and certified divorce financial analyst. During each episode of our show, we explore our guest's personal and professional history and dig into a meaningful legal topic. Please continue to join us for our upcoming episodes, always at 12:30 p.m. live on Zoom. Alexandra Leichter on June 1st, Kendra Thomas and Gina Kang are section leaders on July 6th. We're also happy to announce our upcoming guests will include Lisa Meyer, Melanie Mandels, Neil Hirsch, Judge Susan Lopez-Gish, Tony Storm, and Tigran Palan. Lauren.
Thanks, Dan. Good afternoon, everyone. The obligatory MCLE announcement. You'll receive your MCLE certificate shortly after the program. Please take a moment to complete the survey that's included with your certificate. The family law section is sponsored by White, Zuckerman, Warsofsky, Luna, and Hunt, and by our family wizard. White, Zuckerman, Warsofsky, Luna, and Hunt provides a wide variety of resources to complete almost any project, large or small. They also provide traditional accounting and tax practice services. We invite you to contact them to discuss your specific accounting needs and learn how they can be of service to you. Our Family Wizard is a secure co-parenting platform that supports divorced or separated parents in managing the daily responsibilities of raising children. Specialized features help co-parents organize routines, share files, track expenses and payments, check in at exchanges, send messages, and more, all while thoroughly documenting their activity. That's it for our sponsors. Dan, please take it away.
Thank you, Lauren. Today, we welcome Dan Jaffe to the show. Dan continues to be a leading figure in the Los Angeles family law community, and he's been honored by just about every group and organization there is. He's often called on to share his knowledge and experience on topics big and small. That's basically what we're going to do today. We have a lot to get to, but first, Dan, thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. So our premise for the next hour really is to recognize and learn from attorneys who had a direct impact on you, Dan. Most of them are no longer with us, but they left a legacy of knowledge and experience through you. I know you want to share a lot of that, including stories and practice pointers that will help everybody sharpen their skills and frame their own career decisions. So let's dive right in. Let's start with your current practice and big picture. What drives you to keep practicing?
I blame it all on the late Sorrel Trope. Sorrel and I shared opera tickets, and we were up in the Founders Lounge at the opera. And I went up to Sorrel and said, Sorrel, you're my hero. For 90 years, you kept your firm going. I'm starting a new firm at age 80, so I have 10 more good years. And Sorrel said, what are you talking about? I have 10 more good years. You have 20. So that's, I want to keep Sorrel's vision alive and go till I'm 100. But the reason why I'm really still practicing, when Bruce Clemens, who's my partner for 42 years, he retired. So the real question becomes, do I want to do, if I retired, Jaffe and Clemens and all of the personnel and all the lawyers have to disperse, like what happened when Steve Kolodny died or when Sorrel's firm broke up. But I have great lawyers, great staff. So when Bruce didn't want to continue practicing, I said, I'll take a bunch of the lawyers, all of my staff, office manager, etc. And another good reason is my wife and I like to live the very good life, and the money's good. So that's why I'm still practicing.
That's a pretty good reason, and that's actually a great transition to my next question, which is how do you balance the good life and what you do outside of the office with your work?
Well, I don't play golf, and really I don't know what to do on the weekends if I'm not working. I love to travel. We're buying a lot of art when we travel. And people have called me a bar junkie, and I am. I think in the last couple of months, there was a meeting in San Diego. There was a meeting in the desert. I was at a meeting in New Orleans. I was at a meeting in Scottsdale for the American College of Family Trial Lawyers. And so I do a lot of traveling, and with the International Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, we get to travel really all over the world. It's a great travel club, and I would urge anybody who has the opportunity to join the International Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers to join up, because you get to travel a lot. So that's what I do in my spare time.
If we go back a bit, when did you first become interested in the law, either academically or professionally?
Well, academically, I had an uncle in Cleveland who was a lawyer and a judge. And my dad actually got a law degree, but never took the bar exam. He ran the family stores. But the law has always been a part of my life. Uncle Harry was a bachelor. He used to come over to the house every Sunday and talk about jury trials and what's happening in court. And when he used to come out to visit, he loved to meet with Judge Ito and go to the People's Court, all those folks. He was a really an involved court person, and it really rubbed off. And I loved it from the early days.
Was your family supportive of you following that career?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you know, in high school, I belonged to a Jewish fraternity, AZA, and there are 18 of us graduated together. And of those 18 today, 15 are doctors, lawyers, or dentists. One's a professor at MIT, one's a turnaround specialist, and one runs his dad's company. So when even in high school in Cleveland, we weren't talking about where we're going to college. These people, we were all talking about where we're going to grad school. So that's always, maybe that was growing up in Cleveland in the 50s, because I don't think that's the same today.
So what was your law school experience like?
Well, law school was interesting. I never considered myself a real student. Would you believe I got into UCLA Law School with about a 3.1 average? Big LSAT scores, of course, but they were looking for distribution points. And I went to Michigan, so they were looking for that. But I never really considered myself a student in college or in law school. But after the first semester of law school, I did, what I had to do, and I'm not a crazy student. I show up second in the class, and I said, "Wow, how did that happen?" All of these other friends of mine and all the other students were doing all this studying and annotating. I wasn't doing any of that stuff. So, and then people were coming up and asking me for advice, the non-student. So I said, I better go back and learn everything from the first semester, which I never learned. And I'm going to do what everybody else does. I'm going to brief everything. I'm going to do all these kind of things. I'm going to read everything. And then I was 20th. So I said, okay, so that didn't work. So I went back to my old style.
So yeah, I don't know if that's the best practice pointer for people, but it worked for you.
Worked for me.
So coming out of law school, you were set on law from the beginning. What was your first job out of law school? How did your career path get going?
I think it was a lucky career path. I went to work for as a research attorney in the 2nd District. My justice was Frank Balthus, and it was really fun being up there. Again, not at that time, not an enormously hard time to work. You just go in, you have coffee with the judge in the morning, and you go through some of the stuff. And then they made you put all of your research book. We use books at those. You know how long I've been doing this? We actually use books to do our research. And So we had to pull out all the books from the day before and start working. And then at 12 o'clock, they shut the doors. From 12 to 1:30, we're out. So 1:30, then you're back with the judge. What'd you do this morning? And then we were out of there at 4:30. So it was a great job. So, but I had fun. I just told somebody over the weekend, they didn't believe me. They were an appellate lawyer, Claudia Ribbett, who's a tenant of mine now. I told her that, have you ever had your own case published by the California Supreme Court? She said, not really. Well, I drafted an opinion for the justices on a very complicated case. I worked on it for months. And the justices brought me in, he said, you sure you understand this? I said, yeah, I think I've got it. He said, okay, we're going to essentially sign your opinion. 20 minutes later, the Supreme Court grants a hearing in the case. So they figured, major screw up, that why did the Supreme Court take up this opinion that I thought was brilliantly written? So if you look up a case called Call versus Thunderbird Mortgage Company, the California Supreme Court said, having reconsidered the Court of Appeal opinion, we hereby adopt it in its entirety and put in the entire opinion from the Court of Appeal into the Supreme Court. So they didn't understand it either. I was the only one who really understood all this stuff.
How did that feel at that time? Did that ever make you think about potentially joining the bench like your uncle?
Yeah, I love the law. I really do. Unfortunately, over the years, when you have very smart people working for you and doing all the research, and I've gotten away from it because I've had great lawyers working for me over all these years who do a lot of the legal research. I don't know how to I can turn on the computer, but I don't have the ability today to do that. But it was a fun job. I would love doing something like that.
How long did it take you early on in your career to really feel like you had a handle on it, to really be proficient in the law as much as you loved it?
Well, in family law, proficient in the law, I think, is only a part of it. I'm from the school, and a lot of people disagree with me, that the law doesn't have a lot to do with what we do for a living. It's really how to handle people. It's how to solve problems. It's how to understand and gather up sufficient information to make an intelligent decision. The law seldom determines the outcome of a case. I mean, so I know the law, child support, you have to, make child support, you have to do a discipline master. Spouse support, 4320, you have to go through the steps. But in reality, what you're looking at is needs and ability to pay, which has virtually nothing to do, quote, with the law, although it says you're supposed to do that. So I think that happens to be my gift. I believe that I really can analyze and handle that quickly. And people will tell me if I'm wrong on the law. Actually, one of my partners told me I was wrong on the law. We were in court a couple of months ago. And I said, as soon as the judge said, counsel, this is a court of equity, the law had nothing to do with the decision, and I won. And I turned to her and said, see, we were absolutely wrong on the law. Judge said, this is a court of equity, and we win.
How can younger attorneys learn those skills that are outside of just knowing the law or understanding the rules?
I think it's sort of interesting. It depends on who they're working for. They will learn, maybe we say, mentor the young lawyers to practice like I do or the firm does. You have some firms that have young lawyers who are required to build 1,500, 2,000 hours a year. So that's the firm psychology. So we used to joke about one firm. I'd get a $25,000 retainer at 9 o'clock in the morning, and 6 weeks later, the people reconcile and say, "Do you have any money left?" They say, "We got 17,000 left," because at other firms, they get retained with a $25,000 retainer at 9 o'clock in the morning. At 2 o'clock that afternoon, the people reconcile, and you owe them 5,000 because they had 4 lawyers working on the case. And I don't practice that way, but so the young lawyer, if they learn that's how you practice law, I think that sends a message to how they're going to practice for the rest of their career.
When did you first start practicing family law, or thinking about family law as your specialty?
Well, after the Court of Appeal, I went to work for a lawyer by the name of Melvin Belli. I don't know, a lot of people, maybe the older people on this webinar will know Melvin Belli. When I picked up Mel at the airport to get him the Jack Ruby trial down in Texas, I said, "Mel, you want to be the most famous lawyer in the world?" And his answer was, "I am." It's true. I mean, he invented demonstrative evidence, all of his books on demonstrative evidence. He was really the king. So I started litigation with Belli, but unfortunately, I hope I didn't learn how to prepare a case. Like one of the first cases I had with Belli, he called me up at home like 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning, and he said, "We have a trial on Monday?" "Yes." "What's the client's name?" "Client's name is Jack Epperson." "What's the case about?" "First-degree murder, death penalty sought." "Okay. Have you and a private investigator worked up the case?" "Yep, we've been working on it for 6 months." "Meet you at the office at 12 o'clock. So he comes down from San Francisco, and we talked to him for 2 hours. He filled up one whole yellow sheet of notepaper during this 2-hour conversation and gave a 2-hour opening statement the next morning. When I try to remind him of something, he said, "Don't bounce the ball to me twice." So that's how one person had the ability to try a capital case with 2 hours of information. But every lawyer has to know their ability. There are some lawyers who will go into court and will write out every question that is going to be asked. There are other lawyers who can be handed a file and start the trial tomorrow and has that ability. So you really have to know your own skills and your own ability and your own comfort level on really walking into a courtroom.
How do you do it? How do you personally prepare for a case?
Well, over the last many years, I've had people prepare my cases for me. I tell people what I need. I do an analysis of what the issues are going to be, and it's almost like a law school exam. I'm a very good issue spotter. I know what's going to be coming up. I know what has to be briefed, and I expect somebody to hand me a trial brief and a pocket brief on all of the sophisticated issues. I'll know the facts. And I'm just I have to be very fortunate. I'm a very quick study. And a lot of people just can't do what I can do. But I'm not putting anybody down for that ability, but some people just really have to concentrate and know every nuance and know every fact.
Has that changed a lot over the years? 30 years ago, were you preparing cases the same way?
Well, I was just telling somebody that Don Gersey was a well-known figure of Gersey Schneider. We were very close friends because I think I represented 2 of his wives in their divorce cases. So Don and I are very close. And I could call up Don at 9 in the morning. What are you doing this afternoon? Why? I need somebody to testify on the value of Dr. Schwartz's medical practice at 1:30. Okay, I'll meet you for lunch. So we met for lunch. This is what Dr. Schwartz makes, and Don will testify at 1:30 with a standard formula, 3 times gross adjusted for profitability, and we're done. Today, you know, it's the deposition of the experts. It's every case that, every bank account that Dr. Schwartz has. And that's the part of the practice today that really bothers me. I like the Don Gersey, come on down at 1:30 and testify. Way of practicing a lot better.
So you just talked about how you started getting into litigation, but how did you specifically start out in family law? What were your first family law cases?
I've tried a lot of cases. When the Belli office split up, he moved most of the good personal injury cases back up to San Francisco, where his main office was. Quick Belli story. He had in his office, he had a big picture of a liquor ad behind him. And at that time, lawyers couldn't advertise. And so the ABA busted him for advertising by having this picture in his office. And Mel tells me, you know, getting thrown out of the ABA was almost as bad as getting thrown out of the Book of the Month Club. That was Belli. But when he closed the LA office, there are a lot of cases that nobody wanted. He didn't want to take them up to San Francisco. So I started doing workers' comp. I'm a second-year lawyer. I tried a 21-day jury trial on a big fraud case for one of Belli's partner's relatives. I had to go to the bank because my client didn't have enough money to pay for the jury fees for all these days. I won the case, and the guy I was working with at the time, and I ended up owning a motel in downtown Los Angeles for our fee. And that motel was turned in because the guy I was working with was doing entertainment work, and he was doing porno movies. Some wanted hot, some wanted cold. So we turned that motel, which we were getting, I think, $7 a day rent, and we had about 20% occupancy, was turned into the first adult motel in the country. And we were renting that place out 3 times a day for about $25 a time. So you never know how you're going to win some of these cases and come out very well.
Is there a lesson on billing in there somewhere?
Yeah, you have to watch your employees, because if I'm on a break in a trial downtown, I went to my motel to see if these spinster ladies were running my motel, and I thought they were saving me money. They were grinding up the soap to wash towels and stuff like that. But half of the people who were coming here did not sign registrations, so they were stealing me blind. So that was a good lesson on how to even run a law firm. And there's been a number of examples of well-known lawyers in this town who were not paying attention to their finances at the law firm and had substantial losses. So running my motel, it's taught me a lot of lessons about running a law firm and really watching the finances.
So in those days when you were working for these famous attorneys, did that change, and maybe the motel experience too, did that change your perspective on either the law itself or on the business of the law?
Well, yeah, well, the law itself and the business of the law is interesting. And Dan, we had talked about that issue. You know, over the years, I worked with Marvin Mitchelson, who was, I was in a steam bath in Paris, and talking to people in the steam bath. What do you do? I'm a lawyer. What do you do? I'm a divorce lawyer. you know Marvin Mitchelson, honestly. So with his reputation that way. But when the Palimony case came down, the Marvin case came down, he called me up and said, Dan, I really don't understand the decision. Would you write an article for me? Because I'm asked to lecture all over the country on the Palimony decision. So I wrote an article. I said, Marvin, I'm putting my name on it. He said, yes, okay. And I sent him a bill for $350. Marvin, where's my check? Then he wrote a book, Made in Heaven Settles the Court. Marvin, I want my check and a book. And then nothing, but dealing with a celebrity like that, or Belli or a Mitchelson. And even in my own practice, where we've dealt over the years with numerous celebrities and people at one point who had a huge amount of money and didn't at the end of their lives. That seeing what happened in the practice was very important to me. If you're going to be a well-known lawyer, you have to take care of your finances. You have to take care of your law firm, and you also have to, some of our wealthy clients, that used to be wealthy. I mean, we handled a case years ago. It started off at $1,600,000,000. And our firm probably has done more billionaire divorce cases than anybody in town. So with 2 private jets and helicopters and a 29-hole golf course and a 50,000 square foot house, and they ended up in bankruptcy, and the husband did 30 months in jail because he couldn't remember what he did with the $13 million he got from the sale of a piece of property while the bankruptcy was pending. So when I see situations like that, and celebrity clients or athletes, we've had them where their business managers have stolen enormous sums of money. We've seen business managers go to jail. With one of my clients, 13 million gone. Business managers in jail, and we've seen this a number of times in the practice. It sort of jaded me on handling the finances, both personally and clients' finances in divorce cases.
So you mentioned that early on, the best cases were gone, and maybe less desirable cases were left for you or coming through the door. But you've also said that we shouldn't judge a book by its cover. What are some of the criteria that you consider when deciding to take on a case, or when a prospective client first walks in the door?
Well, really, right before I started family law, I heard about a situation where this old lady came to the lawyer's office. And what's your complaint? Well, the complaint is my husband gives me $100 a week allowance, and I hurt myself. And he said, because you're clumsy, he wants me to pay my doctor bills out of my $100 a week allowance. But they lived in a very small house, and the husband kept saying they don't have much money. They didn't have much money. But they did have 56,000 acres of land in Orange County. So, so that made it a serious divorce case. The lawyer got, I understand, $1 million fee. Then he got $1 million for handling the wife's multi-million-dollar estate. Then she died, and he was the executor of her estate and got another huge fee. So that one fact clued me in that you never know what's going to be walking in your door. But there's the old joke with the kid in the barn going through all the poop on the floor. With this much poop, there's got to be a pony in there somewhere. There are ponies in all of these cases. There really are. When you take them on and you do the right kind of work, you there's gold in them hills, but you really have to know how to find them. And then over the years, we've created, issues and on appeal, which is essentially we create new law where you see the situation in a particular case where the only way you can get a decent result is if the law is either changed or expanded. And we've done that on a number of occasions to have leading cases, like on one of my cases representing the wife of the lawyer at a large law firm. And the husband was a lawyer also, but he wasn't making as much money as my client. The case went up on appeal that the partnership agreement controls the value of a asset in a large law practice. That's Iredale and Cates. So when you handle cases like that on appeal, Bill Ryden in the office did the Valley case at the Supreme Court. So it's really neat when you could establish a new law. We got affirmed on appeal where my client got a huge severance package when his company was taken over. It wasn't his company, but coming up with a theory on the non-compete to allocate his retirement benefit, even though all the money came in while they were married, he couldn't compete for a year or two thereafter. And I said, you have to add in the non-compete provision on a time rule. And it ended up he got 70 or 80% of that severance package, even though it was all paid during the marriage, as his separate property. So that's the stuff I love doing and thinking about. Have you ever been surprised by a case, or I guess I should say, what have been the biggest surprises in terms of cases that have come through the door? Well, it's some like a case that came through the door that we had $1.6 billion and ended up with nothing and a huge receivable. That was a big surprise. That was a serious surprise. But I don't know, the situations where my view is, and maybe I can put everybody on who's on this webinar out of business. I think those of us who really have been doing this for a lot of years, when the person walks in the door and they tell you the story, I think the bulk of us can, in about 2 or 3 hours, tell these people what the probable result's going to be. But if the parties are going to be crazy or the lawyers are going to be crazy, and we have some lawyers in our field who I'm not happy to deal with. So it's a surprise to me. The biggest surprise is on a case that could be settled quickly. I've done that. I represented Rupert Murdoch's first wife, the mother of all of the kids who were running News Corp. 8 months, no accountants, no court appearances, no experts, no nothing, and settled. And if you can do that with a multi-billion-dollar case, you should be able to do that with a case involving $5 million rather than spending $1 million on legal fees. So that bothers me. Months ago, I asked somebody in the office, I want a list of every case in the office. And Ryden's cases, Sandra Mandel's cases, everybody's cases and my cases. And I want you to put a star next to any case where it has 2 sane clients and 2 sane lawyers on the same case. And I think we got 2 or 3 stars. And I think that's the major problem today in the practice, that these cases should be resolved easily. And if you have lawyers who want to string out these cases forever, or clients who are really need psychiatric help, or want to get even, that's what happens. That the cases, they blow up, the fees are astronomical, and we're all very expensive, those of us who handle these major big asset cases. And they really should be done more quickly, but that's maybe I'm not preaching to the choir. I am the choir.
Well, you're touching upon a topic that has come up a lot on our program, and that's civility. Have you seen a change in the level of civility in the family law bar over the course of your time in practice? And do you think you have an idea of what's causing the underlying problems?
I think the major cause of incivility and of many lawyers is their insecurity. I really don't think they know what they're doing, and they figure if they holler and scream and do all those things, that replaces knowledge, it replaces intellect, and replaces an attempt to resolve things. Like even today's Daily Journal, I was just looking at before we got on, there are a couple of new sanction cases. And I think did you put those couple of cases in the materials?
Yeah, you can talk about
Yeah. Where Davenport and the recent Carton case, where the courts are really, at least the courts of appeal are blasting back about saying, judges don't know the law, or you're getting fixed, or that's a conspiracy. I think the lack of civility has changed, and I also think that I don't think people trust each other anymore. I mean, it used to be our word is our bond. I mean, a few months ago, a young lawyer called me up and said, I need a 2-week continuance. I said, you have it. And he said, I'll send you a confirming email. I said, then you don't have it. He said, what are you talking about? I said, if my word is not good enough, that you have a 2-week continuance and you have to document it with an email, which means you don't trust my word, you need to confirm it, then you don't have the 2-week continuance. But I think that's the way the practice has been going, and I think people are gun shy of what people are going to say, or what their heirs of omission people are going to say. That's the way you have to practice today, which I'm not happy about the way the practice is going, particularly in the family law practice, where I've seen discovery disputes where you need the judges don't help. I was representing an entertainer, and we filed an income and expense declaration. I put down his income for the year was $13 million. It was a child support case, and they want to see his bank statements and credit cards. I said, why? We're looking for perquisites. $13 million is not enough to work on a child support for 2 little kids, and you need perquisites. I said, I'll tell you what. So don't bother me with the credit cards. Don't bother with the bank statement. Instead of 13 million, let's call it 15 million. He's got $2 million worth of perquisites. No, we want the bank statements and canceled checks and red credit cards. I said, I'll tell you, give you a better offer. He's got $7 million worth of perquisites. He makes $20 million a year. Now, do I have to show you credit cards and bank statements? Made a motion to compel, and my guy was sanctioned $8,000. So if that's the way the practice is going to go, that where the accounting fees are now higher than the legal fees, when you download 80,000 documents that nobody's ever going to look at. That's my current bitch about the family law practice.
So I think we can talk about some other specific times, but you just touched on the financial issues, and you've mentioned it a few times. You're known as an expert in those financial and taxation issues. One of your partners told me recently, and you mentioned it, that you have an uncanny knack for predicting with incredible accuracy the contours of a settlement pretty early on, even during intake. So I'm curious how you found that niche, how you became an expert, and now even a lecturer on those topics.
Well, it's funny on the tax issue. I'm supposedly an expert on divorce taxation. And how did I become an expert on divorce taxation? As follows. I have a 5-year palimony case and a 5-month marriage. Steve Myers of Jacobian Myers, at that time, Steve died very young in an automobile accident, was representing the lawyer husband. So I'm in the hallway of the courthouse and ready for a short cause hearing on the 5-month marriage. I said, you know what, we have a marriage and your client could pay my client deductible alimony to buy out the claims on the palimony case. And what are we talking about? He said, I think we agreed on, I don't remember, $300,000 or $400,000 payable over 4 or 5 years. And he says, I don't think it's tax deductible. I said, yeah, absolutely. Is it guaranteed? I said, no, it's absolutely tax deductible the way we have it structured. So we go in front of Judge Harry Schaefer. I don't know if anybody knows. If you didn't speak Yiddish, you could not try a case in front of Harry Schaefer. So Steve Myers is now reading off the stipulation, $300,000 or $400,000, alimony, et cetera, the deductibility of which is being personally guaranteed by Mr. Jaffe. I said, what are you talking about? He said, we never would have made the deal otherwise. I said, go ahead, leave it in. And Judge Schaefer on the record said, what are you, a schmuck? Okay, so this is a true story. So about 6 or 7 weeks later, Steve Myers calls me, said, we have a company called Practical Law Courses. And I want you to get an accountant to do a divorce taxation course around the state, 8 locations, which we have set up. And I said, Steve, that was the only thing I knew. You knew you had to have a contingency. I knew that was okay, but I had called Gersey, by the way, to find out how did I do on this guarantee. He said, I think we're okay. So Gersey and I put together the first divorce taxation book. He's looking at opinions he didn't even know existed. I'm looking at cases. We put together a course, and for 3 or 4 years, we ran around the state teaching divorce taxation. And then I worked with Marjorie O'Connell, who was the big Washington, D.C. She had the book on divorce taxation, which I worked with her. Bel Frumkes down in Florida, who was an expert on divorce taxation. So, and I've really just kept up with it. I subscribed to numerous tax publications. If a new family law case comes out on taxes, I'll copy it and put it in my materials. And so that's how I became accidentally a divorce tax expert. And I think it's a pointer for lawyers that if you can develop expertise in any particular field or any area, really develop it. I don't care what aspect of it. It could be child custody, it could be spousal support modification proceeding. You should know every case in existence, not only in your jurisdiction, but around the country on modifying child support or spousal support or any issue like that. And you get to be well known and clients come to you because you have developed that reputation.
So it sounds like a big part of developing your expertise was in teaching on that topic.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, the teaching absolutely was a fluke too. Bruce, my whole career is a fluke. Bruce Clemens and I did a program for the CLE called Divorce Taxation of Pension and Retirement Plans. And so the Beverly Hills, no, the American Bar Association or the American Academy of Matrimony Lawyers was having a meeting in the desert. And I went out there. I don't think I was registered. But just to see all my friends from the various groups from around the country. And they had one CLE program for this convention. It was on division and taxation of retirement benefits. And it was given by a lawyer from New Jersey. The lawyer from New Jersey says, I'm snowed in. I can't get to Palm Springs. So the people putting on the convention said, does anybody know anything about this topic that can do a 3-hour program tomorrow? So somebody pointed me out and said, I think he can do it. So I called the office. We printed, don't tell the State Bar, I printed 250 copies of the State Bar materials, flew them out to the desert, and I gave a 3-hour speech on division and taxation of retirement benefits. The next day, I was really the kid that came out of the chorus line. And because there are so many lawyers from around the country, that presentation, that actually started me on doing a lot of the talking, just the pure fluke.
Love it. You brought up, I want to go back to kind of where we started, learning from attorneys that are no longer with us. I know how important that was for you to get to focus on today. And we've talked about a lot already. But 2 attorneys have been popping up in our interviews more than others. Sorrel, who you already mentioned, and Stephen Kolodny. Let's talk about them a little bit. Did you like working with them? What was it like either being opposing them or working together?
Well, I think I mentioned to you that I represented one of Kolodny's wives, and I was also at his wedding in Boston when he married the next wife. Steve had a reputation of people said not settling cases. And I said, well, Steve and I settled a case over a bottle of scotch at his house one day. And Steve also told the story, but at that time I wasn't drinking. So, no, but Steve was always difficult. You know, we've had one, a representative, very famous basketball player, and he was handling a paternity case and couldn't possibly win. I have 4 negative DNA tests. And Steve then files a motion for child support and attorney's fees. I said, Steve, these people want your license, or you're screwing around with $1 billion piece of property. What are you talking about? And his answer was Barry Scheck beat it for OJ. Okay, but that was Steve taking on cases totally unwinnable, but wouldn't stop. But the work he did on putting out the contempt book every year was really helpful to the bar. Personally, I liked it, I loved it, but I just didn't like that style of practice. With Sorrel and I were good friends. He could get away with stuff in court that nobody else could possibly get away with. I represented the wife of one of his clients. I think he had about $400 or $500 million, and we wanted $1,000 a month for child support for a personal trainer. Sorrel gets up and says, "Personal trainer? Those are for people who are too dumb to count to 10 by themselves." They go 1, 2, 3. I mean, I'm falling off the bench. I think Ken Black was on the bench at the time. I'm falling off my chair. But only Sorrel had the ability to do that. And one of the things I also learned from Sorrel, he was enormously philanthropic. I watched what Sorrel did for years, with USC and various other and he actually got me to make substantial contributions every year, which I do, to the Harriet Buhey Center, to the Levitt and Quinn organization. I just sent a very large check to the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers Foundation, which distributes money. And I think Sorrel was a big influence. My family also, when my grandparents growing up, they would save 5 cents on this and 5 cents on that. But if the charity or something, they needed $5,000, Grandpa wrote a check. But that's the way I was raised. But so the people I really like to, I don't know how much time we have left.
We have a little bit more time. I know you wanted to touch upon your experience with Stuart Walser and some other people.
Oh, that's true. I think Harry Fain and Stuart Walser made me a nationally recognized lawyer. I totally recognize them as the source. Harry was the national president of the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers. He's essentially insisted that I come to Chicago for the annual meeting. And he spent the entire meeting introducing me to every prominent Academy member lawyer from around the country. And this is the young star coming in from the Beverly Hills, and Stuart did the same thing locally, where he started the Academy chapter. And so today, with the organizations I belong to, it's been enormously helpful, and I really recommend to any young lawyers, if they can, to get your credentials up, to get into the academy. It's a great group. I belong to the American College of Family Trial Lawyers, which my wife, who used to be a divorce lawyer, describes this group as the self-appointed best 100 divorce lawyers in the country who meet annually and congratulate each other group. So that's really, they're really the top people. And if you can get into something like that, the ABA, I've done a lot of work with the American Bar Association on the family law section. I mentioned the International Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, which is truly a really interesting group. If you can get involved with that, we get referrals from literally all over the world because of the contacts you make there. And I love meeting with the people and being with the people, like even going to the Northern California chapter of the American Academy up in Napa over the weekend. It's a great way to run a law practice. And if anybody has the ability or interest in doing that, I would strongly recommend that.
So if we use our last few minutes to kind of finish out this lightning round of lawyers who aren't with us, do you want to share any stories about Erwin Buter or Joe Tayback before we go?
Yeah, well, my favorite Erwin Buter story. Erwin marched with Martin Luther King. So Erwin and I had a case. In the old days, all of the cases got assigned out of Department 2. We didn't have direct assignment. So before you could get a trial assignment, you had to go to a mediator. So Erwin and I were trying to get a trial assignment. They sent us to a mediator. And we looked in the window where this mediator was sitting, And there was a long-haired, blonde-haired guy that's had to be 12 years old that's would be mediate two very experienced lawyers who couldn't agree on certain facts in the case. So we go in, and I said, Erwin, you give him 1 minute on the facts, I'll give him 1 minute on the facts, and then we'll leave and we'll go back to Department 2, we'll get a sign. So 45 minutes to 1 hour later, Thomas Trent Lewis kept us in there, analyzed our entire case, told us what to do. This is how a case should be done. This is what the law is. So, Tom Lewis, he actually over the weekend, we reminisced on that story.
Did you say long hair?
Long hair. Had none today. Yeah, we were talking about that. So, and Joe Tayback was really one of the very prominent and tough lawyers. And 1 year we were going to put together a committee, because for every year of his many years of practice, his letters started off with, in my blank years of practice, I have never seen anything as outrageous and unconscionable as your position in this case. So all of us have these letters. In my 5 years of practice, in my 8 years of practice, we were going to put together all the same letter with just a different years of practice and present it to him at a party. We couldn't pull it all together, but all of us wanted to do that. But Joe was a great litigator. So, you know, there's another guy that we mentioned, we actually skipped over, Simon Taub. Simon Taub actually was actually like one of the deans, with Harry Fain and Stuart Walzer. I went to work for Cy after the Belli office broke up, and after I was on practice on my own for a while. And he was a card. He was the consummate bachelor. Now remember, I'm talking about the 60s and the 70s, different world, 60s and 70s. So we represented an enormous number of Swedish models and beautiful women, and Simon would negotiate the retainer with behind locked doors, and then I would do the work. So that can't be done anymore, and we can't take in cases like Simon did. But Simon was always the gracious and funny, and ran a law practice with off the back of an envelope. Simon, what's the fees? What's the fees going to be? He goes, 25,000. Lifts up the file. No, nobody keeps time records. Neil Hirsch worked for Simon. Mark Turk, I just saw read an article in today's Daily Journal. He worked for him, but he was a card, and I think I learned from Simon that you don't have to be mean or nasty, but you really have to be competent. So he was a very good trial lawyer. When I don't know if we have the time, but it was a funny story. He had a friend who was a business manager, and the business manager called him and said, Simon, the piece of property that you have, and Don Drysdale and Carol Burnett and Norman Lear, and we all have this big piece of property that the state of California is condemning to run the 101 freeway. They're condemning the property. We need a condemnation lawyer. Simon says, what are you talking about? I'm a lawyer. No, you're a divorce lawyer. Simon says, I'm a lawyer. How hard is this? So, okay, you're going to handle this major condemnation case for us? Yes, I'm going to do that. So Simon tries the case out in Ventura, and the jury comes back with a a number less than what the state offered, okay, which is unheard of. So Simon makes a motion for a new trial based on his own incompetence, and it was granted. And at that time, I was just finished representing the wife of like the #1 condemnation lawyer in the state. I said, "You're going to hire this guy," who they did. But that was the way to practice law on a non-crazy way of practicing law, which I loved. And if I can impart the same type of thing to a current firm, I hope to be able to do that.
Well, we've run out of time, unfortunately, but we'll go just 1 minute over to ask a final question. And what is it that question is, what would you want your legacy in the family law community, or more broadly in the legal community, to be?
Well, I thought about that when you told me that you were going to ask me that question. The other Dan is what, 40? So I said, when you're 65, 25 years from now, and you're running this same interview program with everybody, and we're going to be talking about a lot of dead lawyers 25 years from now, I want my name to come up and say that I was an example on how to practice family law competently, with trial court ability, with personal responsibility, and getting divorcing families and their children out of this difficult situation alive, well, and sometimes financially secure. So if you could say that about me, I'd be happy.
At this rate, Dan, it seems like you might be a guest at that point again, too.
Well, Sorrel said, let's see. Let's see, Sorrel said I could do this till 100, so maybe 105, I could do that.
Well, all right. Well, thank you so much, Dan. We've run out of time. We've actually gone over, so thank you everyone for sticking around. Please mark your calendars to join us for our next episode, always at 12:30 p.m. We have Alexandra Leichter on June 1st, Kendra Thomas and Gina Kang on July 6th, and later in the year, we'll be scheduling Lisa Meyer, Melanie Mandels, Neil Hirsch, Judge Susan Lopez-Giz, and then Tony Storm and Tigran Palian. Thank you to Genna and Belinda at the bar, the Family Law Executive Committee led by Gina King and Kendra Thomas, and of course, our section sponsors. And most importantly, thank you again, Dan, for sharing your experiences and your stories with us.
Thank you for letting me tell war stories.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Goodbye, everybody.